Hey everyone, it's John. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're here today because today I'm going to be talking about $1,000,000 mistake that almost everybody is making right now. And I want you to avoid the same mistake that I did. So what is that mistake and what is that $1,000,000 thing? So you know that feeling when you kind of achieve something you've worked toward for years? Maybe it's through a job promotion, or maybe it's you buying a nice car, or the next Prada bag, or even a nice sports car, or even get that pay rise that you've always wanted. And it feels good for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but then you're right back to feeling exactly the same as before, feeling lost and feeling upset, and something's missing. And not only that, possibly maybe a little bit emptier even, and wanting the next thing and the next thing. That feeling actually has a name, and psychologists call it the hedonic treadmill. So the idea is simple. No matter what you achieve, your brain actually resets back to baseline. So the more money you make, back to baseline. Got a new relationship, feels good, then back to baseline. A better job, feels great to have a good job, and then back to baseline. So you keep running, but the treadmill keeps moving and the goalpost keeps shifting, and you never actually get anywhere. So maybe in that span of time, you have managed to upgrade your lifestyle. You've got a nicer house, a fancier stuff, nicer clothes, and all that stuff. But it does not translate to that same positive emotion, that feeling that you've been craving for. And I would think, and I would assume, that the feeling is peace. So now most people think that in here, well, that's kind of depressing, so what's the point then? But that's the wrong takeaway, because the hedonic treadmill only traps you under one specific condition. And once you understand what that condition is, then everything will shift for you. So in 1994, there was a guy we all know, he's called Jim Carrey, and he was the most in-demand comedian on the planet. He made Ace Ventura, he made The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, all in 1 year, and he became the first actor in history to be paid $20 million for a single film. So back then that was huge amounts of money. Maybe now it's like 100 mil or something like that after inflation and all that. So his face was everywhere, his voice was everywhere, and kids were doing his impressions everywhere. Adults were also quoting his lines and his famous lines on the movies. And by every measure, Jim Carrey had made it. But yet, in the interview he gave during this exact period, he said something that made me really think. He said, "I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see that that is not the answer." Now I want you to sit with that for a second. The most beloved comedian / movie star on earth at the peak of his career telling you that this isn't the answer. So what's wrong? Well, because nothing on paper was wrong. He had the money, the recognition, the opportunities, the freedom, and what most people would consider a successful life, and what most people would say they would spend their entire lives chasing. He had it, he had all of it, and yeah, by every measure he was successful. And yet, it wasn't enough. So it was during this time that Jim Carrey started painting privately. Not for any reason at all except that he wanted to, and he described it later as the first time in decades where he actually felt real. His words, "When I paint, I'm not trying to be anything. I'm not trying to make anyone feel a certain way. I'm just here in the moment." And Jim didn't go to India to find himself on top of a Himalaya mountain. He didn't do a silent retreat. He didn't quit his career or start over. He simply picked up a paintbrush. That's it. And that act started a conversation between him and himself that he had been on for about the last 30 years. What would I say to that? That is the hedonic treadmill breaking. Not from doing more or trying to be more successful or famous or rich, not from achieving more, but from simply doing one thing that felt true to him. So here's what psychology actually tells us about why the treadmill exists. So we reset back to baseline, not because achievement doesn't matter, they do. Chasing the promotions, the income pay rise, that's all good. But when the goal of the chase is simply the chase, it ends up just spinning the same wheel over and over. And it could also be your body's way of telling you, hey, maybe you don't really want to chase that thing. Maybe it could be something else. And when you achieve something that isn't yours, a goal that you inherited, maybe from your father or your parents or someone you respected, and it becomes a success you performed your way into, your brain and your heart knows. And it doesn't celebrate the same way. It resets fast. Because somewhere underneath, you kind of know that it wasn't really for you. Maybe you were doing it to keep up with your peers who are earning more than you, having fancier stuff, a bigger house and all that. So here's a question I want you to ask yourself. Now, when was the last time you actually did something that was just for you? If you remember what that was, good. And if you can't remember, then this might be the most important question I've asked of you today. Because that gap between who you're performing and who you actually are, that gap is the $1 million mistake. Now, it's not because you're losing money directly. It's more of a metaphorical and representation of the lost currency that you have, that you gave up because you're not pursuing and you're not being who you really are. Because everything you build on a false foundation actually costs twice as much, and it kind of lasts only half as long. Your relationships, your energy, your peace, your potential, all of it paying for a performance that, well, frankly, nobody asked for. You put that on yourself. So here's the one thing I want you to do this week. Find one thing you do that nobody sees that you truly love to do, regardless of what somebody else might think or say. It could be walking, drawing, reading, singing, something, or like opening up a book that you actually want to read. Or maybe it could also be doing something simple like cooking something new or fresh, or writing something that no one will read. Just do that one thing and notice how differently that feels compared to the performance that you've been putting out. It's that feeling you get. It's the same thing that Jim found when he picked up a paintbrush. And that is the signal you've been waiting for. So my challenge to you today is to do what means the most to you, do what feels right by you, and being a truly authentic self, and stop performing and stop trying to be someone else just to look like you're playing the part well. And if you don't know what that is, then it's okay. Take your time to figure that out. But I really hope that you take something out of this session today. And if you have any questions, if you want me to answer anything, I want you to leave them in the comments down below, and I'll give them a shout out and I'll do a topic on it, and hopefully it resonates with you. Otherwise, I care about you deeply, I love you, and I'll see you guys in the next one.